Might have gone a little bit overboard with this one. Sneak preview. Here's all we're going to go through. I'm going to try to go quick and we'll see where it leads us. This video is 5 essential techniques to craft perfect AI prompts. And try saying that 5 times fast. It is not easy. Spoiler alert, there's no such thing as a perfect prompt. Even though I'm trying to teach you how to do one, the models are always changing and you're never going to be able to get a perfect prompt. Maybe that'll change, but just as a reminder, all of this stuff, OpenAI, it's all really new. It's only been around for 2 years. They've been working with LLMs and this concept of smart intelligence for the last 15 years or so. This video was really interesting. It's more conversational, but I tried to pull apart all of the educational bits and distill it down. And hopefully this is helpful to people who are more interested in the crafting part of it rather than the dialogue. I thought it was a great interview and I enjoyed all of their dialogue. If you're interested in that, I would recommend watching this AI prompt engineering deep dive video with some of Anthropic's prompt engineering experts. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about what makes prompts effective. To give a preview of what we're going to talk about, I have 5 areas. First one being use clear and precise language. Provide all necessary context is the second one. Third one is techniques for iterating and refining prompts. The fourth one is about handling edge cases and ambiguous inputs. And the fifth one, we'll talk about how to interact with the models to draw out the full capabilities. And this, as much as this is, it's probably just scratching the surface. So please, if you think of things along the way, leave comments and try to add more helpful things. When I was thinking about using clear and precise language, I was thinking of myself. I am terrible at saying things like things and stuff. The overuse of generalized terms or actually a lot of these things, non-committal phrases, ambiguous quantifiers, euphemisms, we do that a lot in everyday language. And so it makes sense that we want to do that to an AI prompt. We're not talking to another person. They're not really just going to be able to take from its knowledge and just assume much about you yet. Maybe in the future they will be able to, but I know when I'm talking with my wife and I say, hey, do you have that thing? She's like, what thing are you talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, I need to actually say what I'm wanting to say. So that's helpful with these. I will do my best to go through these quickly. I'll write a blog post and share that in the description so that you can have some of these to walk through if you want to take a little bit longer or have it as a reference point for crafting prompts. Be on the lookout for that. Okay, passive voice is something that we also do a lot. It's easier for the LLM to just be direct with it. You don't need to be passive with an LLM. It can handle your direct communication. It's not going to be offended or whatever. Okay, catch all questions and instructions. Make it better, can you fix it? This is easy if it's like a not very important thing that you're wanting to fix. You just copy and paste something and can you fix it? I do that sometimes, but if you have a problem with a website and can you fix it, you might want to tell it exactly what it's looking for or give it the bug it's wanting to fix, giving it a little bit more information there. Also, defining your terms, what those might be, synergy, scalable, low-hanging fruit. Those are things that we understand and they'll probably will get it okay. But if we want to have it be really focused, we can define our terms better. Overly broad statements. So those people, these things, that's similar to things and stuff. And just being specific about what type of person you're talking about. Is it the customer? Is it this type of user? Who is the subject in this prompt? Implicit assumptions. You know what I mean. It's obvious you get it. That's probably good for everyday communication and getting better at communicating in general. However, I think not assuming that the LLM knows what you're talking about already and providing that extra context can be helpful. Undefined priorities or goals. Honestly, we're talking about like personal life skills here. So now it's something that we can do to help the LLM is giving it clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, when we're trying to accomplish by. And this might be even really more helpful when we get to agentic workflows where we have ongoing kind of tasks for agents to accomplish. And I do wish that I had some kind of real world examples rather than these little tidbits. So maybe in a follow-up video, I can showcase how I approach an actual real world problem with prompting. But for now, let's get through these. Okay, number 2, provide all necessary context. Explicitly define a task. It's helpful to give an understanding to the LLM what it's information about what it's trying to do. A lot of times I give transcripts to an LLM to fix the transcript. And if I don't tell it a little bit of context, and it doesn't have to be too much for this, but if I give it the names of people and what we're talking about, it can go in and fix the names of people. It can understand what we're talking about and provide just that much better of a transcript than if it were to just guess and not know those things. Providing background information. What are you doing? What's the goal? Using examples. This is good if you want to get a certain type of output and you can give an example for the way that you want the LLM to provide output. Specify the audience or use case. When we're trying to work on a certain type of audience, copywriting is a good example of this. If you're wanting to write an email or a blog post and you want it to include language that will resonate with that audience, giving it as much details as you know about your audience can be helpful. Clarifying edge cases. If you get to a value that is something that you would expect in the data set, for this example, it's you get an array of numbers and then you randomly have the string apple, giving it an understanding of what to do in that scenario. Including relevant references or data, set constraints and expectations. A lot of times you're writing an input and you gotta do like a Twitter profile, and it only needs to be a certain number of characters. Describe the output format. Sometimes you want a table, sometimes you want JSON, depending on what you're working within. It can format it for you depending on how you tell it to do that. Define success criteria. It can grade itself or know what you're expecting, similar to an example, but more like you're telling it how you would grade it and how you would know it would do a good job at this task. Using role-based context. You are a customer service representative or you are a helpful chatbot and you tell it how you want it to approach the problem. Break down multi-step tasks. In this example, it wants you to extract all nouns and then list them alphabetically. It's a silly example, but sometimes you'll have a little bit more complexity to your tasks. By telling it what to think about step by step will help. And especially more once we get into the reasoning models like O1 preview and this next level of models that can start to do that thinking, telling it how to think about things is going to be the challenge. Set the context of the conversation. This is providing historical information, and it could be a conversation you had with the LLM previously. You can copy and paste information. Okay, a lot of ways to give context. Some of that was just saying the same thing over and over again, but I think it helps to see the different ways, and maybe one of them will resonate with you. Okay, so this is techniques for iterating and refining prompts. Simply first test and analyze the prompt. If you are trying to accomplish a specific task, you can give it different test data and test prompts and start to test its output. Simple as that. You can add specific instructions. We can have it clarify the task for us. You can actually ask the prompt to help you make these instructions and just avoid assuming that the model knows anything about what you're trying to accomplish, and try to be as specific as possible. Experiment with examples. That's saying the same thing as test and analyze, just a different approach to a more scientific method. Adjust based on model feedback. So you can actually ask the model. This was a big thing in that interview. You can actually talk to the model about the prompt itself. And you can say, was there any unclear instructions or ambiguous phrasing that I gave you? And the model will tell you where you can refine some of the language around it to help you be more specific. And then testing edge cases. This is something that's good in general with development and now can be helpful with prompt engineering. And as long as you understand what data you're going to be working with and throw in some curveballs and see what happens. And based off of your ambiguities, you'll probably want to tell the prompt how to handle those. It's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to skip this data set, whatever you want the outcome to be. You can just tell the LLM to do that. Okay, I'm gonna skip forward a little bit. Specify output format. We talked about this a little bit already. You can say JSON or list or a blog post or whatever, tweets. Review the model's process. Oh yeah, so you can, again, talking to the LLM, you can ask it for a step-by-step reasoning of how it solved this problem, and it'll tell you the way that it's thinking about things, and then you can tweak that and adjust that and put it back into the prompt to help guide it to be more specific. Balance generality and specificity. Sometimes you're going to want an LLM that can be a general list and can do a lot of things. And you don't necessarily want to give that LLM or agent, you don't necessarily want to give it specific instructions, but you might want to give it specific ways to think about things. You don't want to overload or give excessive constraints is the point here. Involve human in the loop. So if you're doing a complicated task, and this is more in the realm of agents and LangChain, LangGraph, those type of workflows, Swarm, there's a bunch of them now. You might want to say, hey, abstract this information and then have me review it and ask me for information that I'm missing before sending it to this person or before adding it to this API. Oh, you can also do this with your prompts. So you can be like, hey, I'm writing a prompt. Ask me for different ways that I can improve this prompt, and we can have a discussion about it. And it'll actually guide you through crafting a prompt, which is pretty cool. Have different models that you try and see what the outcomes are and see which ones you like. So you could technically implement A/B testing where you have two different prompts and you compare the outputs and rank them or whatever it is. They do that with the models. So they have these games where you can plug and play different models and they use the same prompts and then you use that. Maybe there could be a prompting game where people come up with different scenarios and you try to write the best prompt. That could be interesting. And then ask for self-critique. I talked about this a little bit. You can actually talk about the prompt with the LLM to see if it can come up with a better way to clarify things. Okay, this is getting long, but let's go through it. Handling edge cases and ambiguous inputs. Talked about edge cases a little bit. It's helpful to know what is going to be in your data sets, and you might not always know. You might not know the inputs that people are going to give, and it's okay to guide the LLM to how you want to handle those edge cases and what error responses you want to give and kind of defaults for if something's unexpected. You can have conditional logic in your flows. If somebody asks for this, do this. If the input is a number, calculate it square. If it's string, count the characters. So it can handle different input types and do different things based off of that. Structure prompts for ambiguity resolution. If the input contains multiple possible interpretations, respond with the input could mean X or Y, please clarify. So this is the human in the loop clarification. You can encourage model uncertainty, and this means if the model gets something that it's not sure how to proceed with, you might want to just say, hey, don't proceed. Just say you're not sure, and that's okay. Other times you might want to say, hey, just take your best guess. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. depends on the situation. You can set scope limits. If you don't want it to make unnecessary assumptions, then just tell it to hard not do anything. Validate output against rules. After it's done something, you can have it validate its own response. Handle null or missing data. If there's no data provided, it can say, hey, I didn't get anything. This is an interesting one. Use redundant instructions. If you're seeing that the LLM is not doing something that you, in a way that you expect it to, like the chain of thought processing, it can be sometimes helpful to reiterate the instructions at a different point in time so that it'll check itself, if that makes sense. Encourage feedback loops. This is a way to continually improve your processes. You can ask the model why it responded a certain way, or it can suggest its own improvements to the prompt. Okay, I know some of that was redundant. Hopefully you're still with me. Got one last section here. Interacting with models to draw out full capabilities. This is getting into different ways to utilize a model. Treat it as a collaborative partner, work with it. You don't have to just treat it like a robot. It's something that can provide ideas. It can think about things in different perspectives for you. So it can be pretty powerful for, especially if like this example of writing a children's book, it's like super creative. I guess one point of clarification on the children's book, that should be from your heart. I think there was a Google ad on Gemini and it was like, help me write a letter to my kid about how much I love them. And it didn't perform very well because people were thinking that father should probably write that letter by himself and it should come from the heart. Anyway, that's not really related to how we're getting the most out of LLMs, but something to consider too is the morality of when you want to be human versus use a robot. Provide context and background. We talked about this a lot, but I think we don't necessarily understand always, because when we write emails to people, it's like bullet points for the most important information and bold this if you want somebody to read it. LLMs can read really fast and a lot of information. Sometimes it's helpful to organize different chunks of context and background, and you can just provide it a lot. Ask for step-by-step reasoning. If you want to learn more about the way that you can solve complicated problems or approach things, and if you use the O1 preview, that step-by-step reasoning can get really long, and it sometimes too much, for me at least, but maybe some of you like going that deep. Encourage the model to ask follow-up questions. So this is actually a great thing to do. I have the concept of a copywriting agent, and I gave it the context of the client, and each step of the way I say, ask a few follow-up questions on how we can improve this copy. And when we're working on a tweet or a blog post or something, it'll sneak in at the end some questions that help you prompt to ways that you can make that piece of copy better. And it's just a really nice way to be iterative on what you're working with so that you're not having to do that thinking. It's doing that thinking for you and you can just respond. So it's a great tip. And then requesting multiple solutions or perspectives. It's just a great idea generator. You don't have to sit there and be that brainstormer anymore. It makes solving problems that much faster. And yeah, this was a lot. I hope it was helpful. I hope there was something that you learned out of this. Some of it might have been redundant. I am going to make a blog post out of this. And give me your comments. Let me know. I'd love to see examples of some prompts that you have. And maybe if you want feedback on a prompt, I'd be happy to give you some. So don't hesitate. Send me a message, comment, whatever it is. Yeah, just open the dialogue up for how we can get better at this AI stuff. Okay, thanks for listening. I know this was a long one.